Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay. There we go.
Is it on? It's on? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to say, Leslie, that you shouldn't feel ashamed of that at all. I literally had no idea that the British were involved, or didn't really put that together, that the British were involved in the slave trade directly until I learned about the history of revolutionary India. And then I was like, whoa, what a country.
I knew about that. I knew about what the British did in India and what it took to get them out. I knew all of that, but it never dawned on me. And I've been an Anglophile since I was 4. It never dawned on me that the UK had anything to do with slavery. Because in my head, the UK is wonderful and can do no wrong, until I went for the first time. And like I said, I saw plaques. The plaques are just behind. There's a park, I think it's behind Buckingham Palace, where the plaques were. And up until I was 34, I had no idea. But I also went to a junior high school that had slave days.
Wow.
Whoa.
Greg, how old were you when you realized that the English were involved in the slave trade?
Was that hidden at any point? I'm 27.
Age gap. This is what's happening.
The entire time. No, I was never taught differently.
It never sunk it like
I went to Portland Public Schools. It's probably different than a lot
I went to public school in the suburbs of Chicago, and I had no idea. No clue. But again, like I said, we went to a junior high school that had slave days.
Yeah.
It was a whole month, and it was a part civics, part economics project for a month. And it was 7th and 8th grade. The 6th graders couldn't do it. And we had slave auctions in our lunchroom where the kids stood on lunch tables. Now, there were 3,000 kids in my junior high, but there were only 10 black kids. So us 10 were not allowed to be slaves. We could buy slaves.
Stay woke.
and that's reparations.
Seriously, we could buy slaves, but we couldn't be slaves.
Right.
And when I'm talking slave days, like people were making crepe paper whips and chains. That once you bought a slave, you could make them wear them. And then the economics part of the project, you had to get a job from a teacher to make money to buy more slaves to be able to do other stuff. But I failed that project both years because I couldn't get a teacher to hire me.
That's so funny that you didn't have enough slave value that you just didn't get out. That's an incredible. I love the conversation that they were having backstage at the principal's office. Like, no, you can't get rid of slave days. But what if there's like a news story gets out of a black kid being a slave to a white kid at slave days? And then instead of going, actually, this whole thing is a dumb idea, they're like, what is the
affirmative
loophole?
Action?
Yeah, what is the loophole that will allow me to have slave days? All right, woke slave days. We still have slavery.
I'll give you one even that my oldest is the same age as you, Gregory. My oldest is 27. He went to school in Texas, in the suburbs of Fort Worth. He had a project in 3rd grade, so he was 8. Draw your ancestors coming to America.
Wow.
I never
made that in the 60s and just never updated it. Like,
no. But this is my son is 27. This was his project, and I was never so glad to have a white husband in my life because he got to draw daddy's side of the family on the top of the boat.
Oh, that's great. That's the way to do it. If you're biracial. Greg, you can pass some tips on to your kids.
We had the Oregon Trail game. Did y'all have that?
Yeah.
That was like really big because I'm in Oregon. So like it was like the whole year for us, and it was like everything, but like where you have to kill the buffalo so that Native Americans don't have them. It's just absurd.
I just kept getting dysentery. I couldn't win. I don't.
You either do imperialism or you get dysentery. That's how the game works.
Correct. That's how it goes.
Yeah, I also had the issue with my kids because they were biracial of every year school trying to make me pick a race, and I refused. So I would always pick Caucasian and African American, and every year I would get a call from the school telling me I needed to pick one, and I would go, no, if you feel the need to pick one, then you pick one. So every year, my kids are 5 years and 12 days apart. They were only in school 1 year, and that year one was white and one was black.
Wow. I love that
Elizabeth Warren had to pick one.
Greg, like, I'm gonna lose some connects. I bust out on this one.
No.
She said, I have to make the hard choices. I have to stay in these slave days. All right.
They're like, hey, we need to know how we're supposed to treat your kids. So could you please mark one box?
Yeah.
It gets
the
better.
School cops need to know what to do.
Yeah, exactly. The school resource officer needs to know if it's detention or jail.
There's that, but the funding also came because different races, they got more funding if different minorities got better test scores. And my oldest always tests exemplary. So his freshman year in high school, they made him Hispanic.
That's a mess.
You love to see it.
Absolute mess.
No child left behind, baby.
Wow.
That's just.
Greg, how are you, like, this feels like an absurd conversation.
Yeah.
Are you identifying your kids? Do they have an identity?
I mean, I think it's one drop rule, but I think they'll be excluded when it's bad for them, but I think they'll just look like Italians or something because, they're not, I think they're probably pretty white passing. But I don't think you can escape being raised by like a black man either. So it's going to be awkward for them. I don't know how it's going to work. I mean, I don't know how I don't know if they're going to sit with the black kids automatically or not, but they're certainly going to catch this culture.
Yeah. Being raised by you is going to make them automatic. Being by both your parents, odds are the black kids will adopt them because that's a very live mother and father combination there.
That's true. With my luck, they might just grow up and become Republicans or something, though. But
you might have that. You might be in that Pete Buttigieg lane of just, like, they're moderate and their parents were radicals, and they're like, wow, it's really wild what you guys are doing over there anyway.
I think that was Kamala's thing too. I keep hearing that. Yeah, her parents were like Marxist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you're gonna get an Alex P. Keaton Family Ties reference.
Ooh. Hey, look, at least the grandkids might get some money out of it. You've been putting in all this work. You gave up all the money. The kids, they can get the money. It'll be fine.
That's true.
How's it going in Portland?
Oh my goodness, man! We had a murder on the streets at the protest, and at first, at that night, it was like, okay, well, for sure, what happened? So in the daytime, it was Trump rallies throughout the entire city, and they're just terrorizing the city, just pepper spraying, beating people up, like really gruesome stuff. And then at like 10 p.m., I get a text, and they're like, someone's been murdered. I'm looking at the body. People still have guns out, this and that. And I'm like, okay, for sure, one of the Trump supporters murdered someone. It turns out that what it appears to be is a more well-known Trump supporter. I mean, well-known meaning he's an alt-right activist in our town, or at least has been connected to like the Patriot Prayer rallies, got shot by somebody, by a white person who had been arrested for having a gun at a protest earlier during this uprising. It's interesting because had I been arrested for having a gun during this uprising illegally at a protest, my charges would not have been dismissed. But this person identifies as an anti-fascist and is suspected of shooting this Trump supporter. It looks like there was bear mace in the air from that Trump supporter. But it's all so what we get from the national stage is Trump saying that it's all anarchy, Portland's on fire. It's certainly not that. And then we have our mayor gets to come off as like the resistance mayor. But we got to this point because the alt-right rallies that keep happening have no police presence, and they just have free reign over our city to beat and terrorize our entire city. And when the left-wing protests happen at any time, there's immediately a declaration of a riot and police violence and mass arrests and beatings and all of these things. And so this didn't have to happen. It didn't have to escalate to this point. It's obviously like bad that there is death in our streets, regardless of who it was. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. And it also escalates the situation. So now we're in a situation where the National Proud Boys organization is organizing a rally here, and things are really escalated. But this follows the week prior. Trump supporters did the same thing, rallied around our city, and multiple instances of them pulling guns on people, finger on the trigger. And so when that was allowed to happen with that sort of escalation, and also when we have even Democrat mayors painting protesters as attempted murderers when they do a dumpster fire, or as enemies of the people, as the president does. But that dangerous rhetoric is what escalated the situation to where you had the alt-right believing that they needed to come into Portland and liberate it with guns. And now there's death, and that's, clearly bad.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's unfortunate that the situation is reaching this point. I mean, like, people can say whatever they will about the person that was killed and what kind of person that he was, but it's unfortunate. Even if you're, this is where we're at. Is that this is how it's like going down?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's clear about it is instantly any Black person in the Portland area is scared of going outside after that, because the retribution is going to hit Black Portlanders first and worst. And so your skin then becomes a target for the people that want revenge for this killing. And so that sort of escalates everything as well. I mean, we all know that, the right are not the only people with guns. And once those guns on either side start getting used, the situation is very different. Especially when we've seen, as with all cities, police are only interested in policing one side of that equation. And I think especially in Portland, but probably everywhere, that police do not view themselves as a legitimate target for protest, and thus any protest of them is illegitimate. Whereas when Trump supporters rally and stuff, they leave it alone. And we're in this dangerous point in America where policing is not just a dangerous occupation for all involved, but is now so much more an ideology as well. I think it takes a certain kind of person to look at the world on fire and say, who should be enforcing everything? It should be me, right? I think what I've said is that police officers are oftentimes the high school bully, or the kid who was bullied the most in high school and wants to make up for it. We saw images of police making tackles in Portland as there was just a scramble, and they're getting down in their stance, and they had horrible form. You could tell they didn't actually make the high school team, but they're laughing. They were laughing and just tackling women and beating them. Like, this is the fantasy that they live out. So it's hard, because not only are blue lives not a thing, it's a job, but more importantly, I think it's increasingly an ideology. We see that with the remarks of every police union across the country, especially in Portland. Our police union is really sympathetic to the far right. And so I think that's a really dangerous situation. There's a lot of guns involved, obviously, on for lack of a better term, on all sides. So things have escalated. I would be shocked if there wasn't more like gunfire and death here in Portland. And I think it's going to have a huge impact on the rest of the country, as we saw with what happened in Kenosha.
Yeah, for sure. I want to address. I'm not even gonna put it on the screen because I don't want to give this person the dignity. But this leads perfectly into like one of the main topics I wanted to get into today. That I would love to get everybody here's feedback on and just like kind of like kick this around a little bit. There's a conservative in our comments because there always is, claiming that the left has been escalating violence for 4 years while the right did nothing. I want to make the case very strongly that the right's violence begins with mass shooters and that the right has been doing violence for a long time. And that like everything that we're seeing, like Kyle Rittenhouse is not the beginning of something. He's the end product of a long period of terrorist indoctrination on behalf of white nationalist groups. So just to kind of like start getting into it, and feel free y'all to like jump in and interrupt me because I'm going to go through like a lot of stuff here. And
real
like,
quick, I just want to say that Kyle was 17, and as a result, like his entire upbringing has been seeing this stuff happen. You know, so like from a very young age, he's seeing people kill other people and then nothing happens. And that gives that like that kind of deranged mindset, like oh, well, I can do it and then nothing will happen. You know, like, so it's like kind of that like soft enabling from like infancy in a kind of way, kind of like it's breeding this kind of terroristic impulse, like straight from the get-go.
I think, okay.
Well, and don't forget, his mother drove him there, and I don't know if you saw pictures of her, but she was all camouflaged out too.
Completely.
I think it's also important that we like are defining terms here, because the right and also actually Democrats are often conflating, and we do this with a lot of things. There's just a binary: is this violence or is it not? And I think it's important to note that police shooting Black people in the back, that's clearly violence, right? Police killing anybody or beating them at protests, etc., is violence. The mass shooters we see from El Paso to the incels, etc., that are all right-wing sympathizers, that's violence. Graffiti is not violence. Like in sometimes I know that these things have human impacts. Looting is not necessarily in itself violence. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse was there protecting a gas station. I guarantee you the oil executives of that gas station did not need his help. If they really, really wanted to protect that gas station, they could afford to send their own private army to protect a gas station. And so, yes, burning something down, I think, can be considered violence. But the violence of a building and the destruction of a building and graffiti is not at all comparable to 7 shots in the back or what Kyle Rittenhouse did. There's a scale of what is violence and what is not. And there's a scale of violence, whether it's a mass shooting or, you know, self-defense. So like the right likes to say we've been escalating violence because they've seen ACAB spray painted on things on Fox News. That's just not violence, and it's not the escalation that has led us to this point.
Correct. Whereas I can make a very strong case that, you know, right-wing violence has been escalating, has been going on for a long time, and that all of these things are connected, that these things are not happening in a vacuum, that we are seeing the product of, you know, a white nationalist terrorist type organization, you know, slowly gaining more power. And not one organization, because obviously they're not unified, but still, like, you kind of get the idea of what I'm saying. So
Kennedy,
I want to... Go ahead.
Before you get into that, I just want to say I knew for a fact that this was going to happen. For people who are new to the show, we probably do a well-researched episode, maybe 20% of the time. So when y'all started acting up in the comments, I was like, you picked the wrong day, because this was a researched episode day, and the receipts they're in line, they're in order. They've got the little javelin through the center. So
I got a whole list of notes here for you. All right. So on the night of February 26, 2012 in Sanford, Florida, George Zimmerman murdered Trayvon Martin. A lot of people consider this to be a relatively random act of violence. Like if you talk to people just kind of on the street in America, they might agree that it was racially motivated or that there were these biases involved, but they would still argue that it's relatively random. But I'm going to show that like there's a pattern to this stuff that is not so random, because What happens a couple of years later is on June 17th, 2015, Dylan Roof shoots a church in Charleston, South Carolina, murdering 9 people. Dylan Roof was known to rant about the murder of Trayvon Martin, defending George Zimmerman, and in his manifesto that he presented in court, Dylan Roof basically said that the Trayvon Martin case had, quote unquote, awakened him to like the problems of race in America or whatever. So like this random act of violence has inspired a not so random act of violence. And as we continue, we're going to see more of that. In August 12th, 2017, James Alex Fields Jr. deliberately drove his car into a crowd of people that had been peacefully protesting the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, murdering Heather Heyer and injuring 19 others. James had been radicalized by a group called Vanguard America. Now, this is an action that most people acknowledge is like a relatively, like came from a relatively organized right-wing place. But these actions, these timelines converge is what's like important here, is that these things are not unrelated. People look at this Heather Heyer murder and they look at the George Zimmerman murder and they think that they're looking at two different things. They're looking at the same, you're looking at the same kind of action. So on March 15th, 2019, Brenton Harris Tarrant goes on a devastating massacre that spans across 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, murdering 51 people. In his manifesto he published online, he references Dylan Roof as a major inspiration for his crime. So again, this is getting less and less random, people. Like, this is not, a lot of people still look at this, they say this is random violence. This is not random. This is organized right-wing violence. On August 3rd, 2019, Patrick Crusius opened fire in a Walmart store in El Paso, Texas, murdering 23 people. In his manifesto, he references the Christchurch shooting. So they're all referencing each other. All right. But here's where it connects with James Fields and Heather Heyer and all of that. All right. So when James Fields murdered Heather Heyer at the Charlottesville rally, Vanguard America, the group that radicalized him, split up. They couldn't agree on whether they were defending him or not. So the group that went on to defend him is called Patriot Front now. And they are recognized by the SPLC as an extremely dangerous organization. Possibly one of the most dangerous in America. All right. So what does Patriot Front like to do? Who does Patriot Front cite as a major inspiration? The El Paso shooter.
Right.
The Patriot Front is obsessed with the El Paso shooter. Memes about him constantly online. Okay. So Patriot Front does this. What else does Patriot Front do? Patriot Front is at the front of the meme war that is promoting car attacks against peaceful protests, of which there have been more than 20 that the police acknowledged this year.
Yeah, I was at one actually during the action at Stone Mountain. Yeah, we had somebody with a car like ram somebody and try to get out that way. Luckily, like nobody was seriously injured or anything, but there were a few seconds of panic during that incident. Yeah.
Another thing I would like to interject with.
Sure.
Is the Christchurch shooting was like heavily like memed about on like places like 8chan and 4chan and like Kiwi Farms and all these like the
Christchurch shooter was on 8chan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
Multiple
advertising
shooters
it there.
were.
Like they were like, and this is like these are like loosely organized, like decentralized kind of places where people will go to like originally like, oh, I'm just going to talk about something without having my name. So like I can say whatever I want. And then like you have like all of this violence escalating. Trump wins. You have like Charlottesville. And then like it gets more and more mainstream. You've got QAnon starting to gain attention on these platforms. And then like 4chan kind of gets taken over by like kind of like QAnon, like, and then they move all to 8chan, which is like more dangerous, more radical. And then they like just start like, and they are online all the time, like 24/7. They are online. They are looking at the news. They are trying to dehumanize like black people, protesters, left-wingers in general. This is their entire project. And so when you do that for years and years and years, you brainwash
yourself.
Exactly.
It's literal self-brainwash.
Like if you watch the Christchurch shooting, the guy is like using epic memes like while he's massacring people. Like he's like talking about Pepe the Frog. like in the middle of like a massacre, you know? And it's like, the idea that that hasn't completely changed society to me, like we just kind of stopped talking about it a week later, is just baffling.
And Andrew, the people in charge of society, like, are all 80. They don't even use the internet.
Also, they approve of this because this is reactionary violence, which is part of the point that I'm trying to make as a whole. All of this violence is reactionary violence. It's reactionary against a perceived change in the social order that will disbenefit these people. And so, like, you know, the billionaires and millionaires, they will never say it, but a lot of the old white millionaires love these shooters. Let's be real. So to kind of like finish this conclusion, okay, so Kyle Rittenhouse, we don't know enough about his exact beliefs at this stage to talk about him in particular as like the conclusion of this.
Out real quick?
Sure.
I'm pretty sure, and like that, like his family and like his lawyer are like QAnon adjacent.
That's what it seems
like,
yeah.
Yeah, and are like peddling this narrative that he's like an American hero. I saw this like press release kind of thing that like the lawyer was calling him like comparing him to the shot heard round the world, and he's starting the second American Revolution against tyranny. And it's like, tyranny, wait, is it the government? No, it's just random people that live in a city. That's tyranny all of a sudden.
Right.
Like the idea that these people call themselves patriots is so ahistorical to me, and it's just like they're literally loyalists, is what they are. Like if you look at this historically,
it's reactionary violence, like I said.
Yes, they're not patriots in any capacity. If they're going to make any sort of historical "I'm this" from history, they are loyalists during the American Revolution. These are like the people that would like get upset when like, oh, how dare you throw tea off the ship, like that kind of stuff. Like this is not, oh, I'm standing up against like tyranny, because tyranny cannot exist in like a town of like a bunch of people like screaming in the street. That's not tyranny. That's
so. Again, we can't know exactly what Kyle Rittenhouse believes at this point. We can kind of speculate, but
we can guess.
We can talk about a shooter that we know everything about what he believes, and this actually is closer to home for me anyway, so I know all about it. We can talk about Stephen Ray Baca as the conclusion here. So Stephen Ray Baca shot a protester non-fatally here. It was a peaceful protest, an anti-racist protest protesting the statues of Don Juan de Oñate. We talked about this on a previous stream that you can probably find somehow. I don't know. But Stephen Ray Baca was a completely, like, this is, again, another act of violence that no one is looking at and saying this is random. Everybody can look at this and say this is clearly a white nationalist act of terrorism. So Stephen Ray Baca is a part of a group called the New Mexico Civil Guard, which is currently like under heavy like pressure from the state to shut down, heavy legal pressure from the state to shut down entirely after this incident. So that should give you an idea of what kind of group it is. And the New Mexico Civil Guard, this is where it all comes full circle, is directly connected through its leadership to the leadership of Patriot Front. So again, to bring this all the way home, this is none of these acts of violence are random. They're all connected to each other. This is all a part of a system of white nationalist terrorism, believing that like any of these things are random, that they're not building on each other, and that they're not creating like a larger and larger and more violent problem, is just failure to see what is there, what is happening, and what these people are doing and where it's headed.
Well, I personally think that the denial of all this is strategic. It's to give that you know, oh, we're just going to reset society every single time one of these things happen and just stop talking about it like a week later. Like it's that like kind of idea of like, oh yeah, you can just do something, get away with it, and everyone will just pretend it didn't happen a little bit later. Like that's, you know, that's part of the strategy. Like, so when you've got these 8chan Kiwi Farms armies out there, it might seem hilarious, but like on the front lines of the meme war, that's a serious thing, because that's a pipeline that starts at these heavily like Stormfront, 8chan, 4chan, Kiwi Farms, and it leads to like people's Facebook feeds. I look at like, you know, like some family members reposting like QAnon, like stuff that originates on 8chan on Facebook. Like it is a pipeline that tries to like normalize and rationalize this right-wing violence. So like you see like congressional candidates, Republican congressional candidates and stuff sharing these memes of like Kyle Rittenhouse is an American hero. And it's like, where did this come from? You know, like and when you trace them, they all come from these neo-Nazi adjacent websites. Like that's where they all originate.
Yeah, and that system for recruitment exists for younger people, but it also exists for how older people absorb the news, because stories that come from those exact same sites end up on like Breitbart or some other low grade like clearinghouse, and then they go from Breitbart and they go up to Drudge Report, and then they just it's laundering of bullshit. You start with bullshit and you just have it gradually change hands over the course of like 8 hours. Like this isn't always like a weeks long process. Sometimes it can just be 8 hours from just going from bullshit on a message board to bullshit on a small blog to bullshit on a big blog. Andrea, am I creating editing work for you? Can we get away with
Yes, but I don't care.
To it just being on Fox News the next day and it just being something that millions of people get. That communication line exists. And unlike the left, where we have, you know, MSNBC and CNN who work to like take this stuff out, there is direct communication. And it's one of the reasons why they're all ideologically on track with each other between the younger, more radicalized folks and the people that fund them. If you can imagine a world where like posts on Twitter that are like the Twitter discourse of the day would be on an equivalent to CNN in like over a weekend, by the end of the weekend, that is literally how fast messaging like moves up and down. And it's real concerning.
Yeah, and you also have the president of the United States like signal boosting this. He was defending Kyle Rittenhouse, and one of the things about when he was defending Kyle that he said is he was saying, "Oh, we all saw the same video. We all like." He's trying to like make people think that it's like it's just classic gaslighting. It's like, yeah, we saw the same video. I saw the same thing you saw, and this is my takeaway.
I just want to say too, like on the subject of this like denialism, that idiot in the comments who's just like posting the
you didn't change
shit,
anything.
He literally, as soon as I said a conservative in the comments is blah blah, he goes, "I'm not a conservative." Like that's like these people just immediately deny. They won't even admit to like the slightest bit of culpability towards their own ideology because they've learned to just deny completely who they are and what they do and what they believe. It's
not something that they can get away with in public. And so they just like, if you start shaming it, they'll just melt into, I'm a libertarian, whatever. But I do want to say them going, I'm not a conservative, I'm libertarian, is a lot like when we call Leslie a boomer and then she goes, oh, I'm Gen X.
Okay, I don't sound like that.
All right. Yeah, that's a very good point. So,
but I mean, okay. So think about it this way: libertarian and Republican. I mean,
they're not the same.
They're not, but most people okay. So you guys are like really dialed in to politics. Most people aren't.
Right.
Most people just aren't.
Yeah.
They get their political information, sound bites, hearsay. Some guy told them on the street, they overheard some shit. I mean, people don't try and get really informed themselves. And especially people my age, Brandon, and boomers and older.
That's what I was talking about with the Facebook stuff. Like they just like scroll down their feed, they see a little meme and a caption, and they think it's real because, oh, I saw it on Facebook.
Right.
Facebook's that's where I get my news, is what they say.
And me, my generation, or me personally, I see those things, but then I take a next step and go, okay, let me go online and see if I can find this somewhere else before I share anything. Or unlike most Republicans that I've met recently, if I do post something, I've got friends who will check me and go, hey, this isn't right, or this isn't completely true. But my friends will post a link going, here, this is, so you can get the information. And then I will go, hey, thanks, and then delete it. But they won't do that because they will never admit they're wrong.
I mean,
ever.
we saw how quick they were willing to like shift. I mean, Trump did not get a majority of Republicans vote in their primary, and within a couple months, he has close to 90% approval and then close to 100% approval within Republicans. And it's not necessarily based on policy. So when we try and nail people down on, are you a conservative? Are you a libertarian? I saw someone in the comments that's like, I'm for abortion, and or people that are like, I'm just for liberty. Like it's all about racism. It's like, you want the right to be able to kill Black people. And you will find in a lack of accountability. You want the right to be able to do whatever the hell you want, to not wear a mask because you want the right to be able to harm other people, particularly and especially Black people, and whatever ideology that you can put behind that, or whatever name you can put with it, it doesn't really matter because
when people say things like, I'm not left, I'm not right, like, I like liberty. What that is an equation saying like, oh yeah, right-wing people are shooting up mosques, mass murdering people like every few months and like going to the streets and beating people up. And left-wingers are like, I don't know, breaking a few windows. And those are like the same. Like, so killing 50 people is the same as throwing a Molotov at a Wendy's.
Well, it's
like,
just
and they try to make these moral things. And I get it. I'm not trying to like act like you're a bad person if you say I am above it all, not left, not right, but forward, Andrew Yang. But like that whole thing is just malarkey. It's not real.
Don't you have a show literally called Above It All?
Yes, and I'm really above it all, unlike these fakies.
Andrea is an actual pure centrist, unlike you fake centrists.
But what I find interesting is the right is now talking about how violent the left is, and just in their sloganage, and like if you see some bumper stickers of Trump supporters, I don't see any bumper stickers of left-wing people that are violent, but I have seen that from Trump supporters. When I lived in Texas before I moved back to Florida, the guy directly behind my house had a fuck Obama sticker on his truck where the F and the K were AK-47s. Up the street, there were two people that had the exact same bumper sticker on their car that had a picture of Hillary and a picture of Trump, and it said, Trump that cunt.
I mean, in Portland, like one of the biggest like memes and stuff that they use, I don't know if this is national or just here, but it's like one of their calling cards is the helicopter. And it's because of, I think, Pinochet dropping leftists and socialists out of helicopters as a punishment. And they're saying that that's what they want to do, right? And that's not liberty. That's just killing people who you disagree with. And so, like you said, that's the sort of violence that they promote. We're also in this funny situation where it seems like Trump and the Republicans had this attack like ready for whoever was going to be the nominee, and maybe they chose this when they thought that we were going to have a socialist nominee. But Biden is very clearly not like a huge friend of leftists either. And so they're trying to paint him as this radical socialist, like communist, like puppet of the left. And it's really hard to do because they want to also say Kamala's like they try to use the left-wing points that Kamala was locking up Black people, etc. But then they also want to say that there's going to be complete anarchy in the streets if you elect these people. And so the like attack is not even coherent. And it's also just weird because it's like, elect me to stop what's happening under me right now.
It's like, just extortion. That's what it is. Like, I'm not going to do anything unless you give me my second term.
But he's blaming the Democrat mayors. Like, are the Democrat mayors going to listen to him in their second term? Like, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of most of our Democrat mayors anyway, but like on January 20th of 2021, it's not like then the Democrat mayors are going to be like, well, we're going to have to pack it in now because he got his second term. It doesn't make sense.
I don't know.
It's
maybe
so
if your guy wins re-election, who knows what he'll do? But
he might be in Trump's cabinet.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I on the subject of like bumper stickers and stuff, I remember the NRA ad that they made, I think it was about a year ago, where they basically were just like, shoot leftist protesters if they're wilding. I don't know if y'all remember that ad, but it was like very disturbing and like extremely just
or
like
one of their biggest things is driving through they're really proud of like you should drive through protesters.
Totally.
That's not liberty.
No. So on the other hand, I see a lot of leftist bumper stickers around here where I live, and most of them are about healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, like Black Lives Matter or trans rights or like gay pride flag.
I see that coexist sticker everywhere. Is that an attack on somebody? Because that one really seems like it's not.
I still got my billionaires can't buy Bernie sticker on my car, and that's like horribly violent.
But you get this like kind of mentality where right-wingers think they're constantly under attack. Like even when they control the presidency, they're still under attack at all times. And they need to project, I'm a strong man. I got guns written on my car. Look at me. And it's like, you're nothing. You're a loser. You're a dullard. But like instead of actually thinking about these things, it's like, why do I have guns all over my car? They just think it looks cool. Like muscle shirts or like sunglasses or, like it looks cool to them.
It's so funny because like, I just thought of this when you're saying this, like really, I mean, the left has guns too. And we don't put bumper stickers on our cars because we don't need it to prove like how cool we are.
Yeah, I have a Department of Peace bumper sticker.
Oh Lord. I have to say, as the token straight of the show, guns are cool, cars are cool, sunglasses are cool. Maybe just don't let cool things take over your entire identity to the point that you are, what's happening here? Oh my God, what's happening? Okay. That's incredible. Look, you look 10% cooler right now.
Andrea, you need to get a truck and just start streaming from the inside of a truck exclusively.
I don't even know how to drive, but that's actually
you don't have to drive. It doesn't have to be drivable. Doesn't have to be drivable.
You shouldn't be all you people who are driving doing your blog, cut that shit out.
Stop that immediately.
I really should start doing the Liberty Loop from a fucking like Suburban or something. Like that would be really good.
Just buy someone's $300 non-running rusted out truck, park it in your driveway, and that's your new streaming center.
Listen, I do want to talk about this when we're talking about messaging. I live in Atlanta, so there's been like Trump basically trying to do two strategies at once because like a couple months ago, all of the ads from Trump were like targeted at black people in Atlanta who I guess Ben Carson told him black people in Atlanta were gettable for him. So there's been lots of ads about how like Joe Biden put together, he created police oppression. And then they've got a clip of him going, every bill came out of here the last 25 years. It's about crime and black people. My name's on it. I'm passing all the bills and I'm fighting all the crimes. And so they find the clip and then they go, Joe Biden imprisoning black people. Then you hear like the stock footage of a jail door. Vote Trump 2020 to save and free Black America. And then Trump's like, I'm Donald Trump. I approve this message. So those were the ads like 2 months ago. Now, for the last month, the ads have been like, there's a white woman and she's on the ground. She's like reaching for a phone and the operator's voice comes in. It's like, hello, this is the police office. Joe Biden is in office. He's immediately defunded the police. The police don't exist anymore. There will be a mental health worker coming to your apartment in 3 weeks. Have a good day. And then it just hangs up on her. And then the I'm Donald Trump. I approve this message, which
it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's
like,
wild.
Like one point for point, it is an exact 180. Like every detail, every nuance, every talking point is exactly the opposite.
You can't have
both, these conservatives do it too. Like you see people on Facebook and stuff doing that.
You can't do both things where you go to a black person and say Joe Biden was the architect of the police state and also say go to a white person that's the next room over and say Joe Biden is controlled by the left and he will defund and abolish the police as soon as he gets in there and the streets will run red with black people wearing red outfits. Like it's a mess. It makes.
I mean, they're doing the same. The GOP's doing the same thing here with border security and like advertising to like try to elect Trump. You know, like 6 months ago, it was like they wanted the Latino vote, so it's like they're like, you know, they're doing all these ads and it's like Latinos for Trump. And it's these people talking about how they just want people to, you know, immigrate honestly and through the system and, you know, all that kind of stuff and like whatever. And then it's like 6 months later, they're airing ads that are like, the border is hell.
Well, what about this right-wing movie, which if we were talking the other day about streaming a movie, and I don't know if we could get this because I wouldn't want to make any money, but that new right-wing movie, The Hunt.
Oh, I saw that. I didn't see it. It looks like it's one of those above it all radical.
It's basically the premise that I got from the trailer is that the left are using people from the right to hunt, just like picking them up off the street.
Like it's not the opposite; it's the left that's doing
it.
It's like Hunger Games and The Purge. The elite leftists of Hollywood and stuff like to shoot.
It's kind of like Hostel, but political.
Now you know what? I don't mind. Like if people were to, if you're right wing. And you need to watch this kind of thing to get your anxieties about real life out of your system. Like this is what this is really like Get Out for Black people. They've got that's like the white Get Out. Like I go there and Nancy Pelosi is just in the back of a pickup truck with a rifle and just picking us off as we go to church and go to softball games and we go to the bar with our friends and just the libs are just destroying us and capturing us. Go see the movie. Cry, talk to your wife. That was real fucked up, wasn't it? Yeah, baby, it really was. It really was fucked up, baby. And then you go home and stop.
No, because they get pumped after that. It's kind of like me when I came home from Lord of the Rings and I got on my motorcycle for the first time. I was like, if Frodo can do it, I can do it too. That's what these people are doing.
See, we're thinking of it as Get Out. Really, it was like Black Panther for them. They got out. No, it was more like Amistad. They got out. They wanted to fight a white person. The first white person, first black person I see, I'm just gonna catch.
But no, they're not wanting. This isn't about black people though. This is about white liberals.
Yeah,
but it's a metaphor for what they really think is happening. I mean, it's funny because in the same dark corners of the web that we're talking about on like 4chan and 8chan and all these things is where they have this like conspiracy of the child pedophile sex rings and Pizzagate in all of these things. The same QAnon stuff. They really think that like leftists have these, or the Wayfair thing where they thought that children were being sold in Wayfair containers because they were too expensive.
Just amazing.
You're
an amazing theory.
Listen, you Wayfair truthers, I gotta break it to you. You are not a social activist. You are broke. That's the problem. That's what's going on here right now. Okay.
This is all just reminding me too of like a week ago when we had that commenter that was like melting down crying. They punched a white guy in Portland, and then 15 minutes later he was like, "You guys don't look tough. I can fight." Like, which is it? Which
I don't know if
you conservatives are so inconsistent at this point. Like, you'll just talk out of both sides of your mouth in like the same sentence and then expect everyone to just take it seriously.
They're just like, come get some all the time. And then like Andy No catches a milkshake and they're like, he has brain damage, these violent leftists. The milk went through his earlobe. And it's like
I love on Facebook when I go at it with somebody from the right, usually what shuts them up, if I screenshot, like I will do a deep dive into somebody's Facebook page while I'm talking to them. So then I will screenshot something from in their Facebook page and then put it into the comments and go, this is going to be part of my next book. And so if you want to say anything else, let me know because I'm going to screenshot this whole conversation. And that usually shuts them the hell up.
This is Leslie on Twitter. We have something similar. It's called This You. And then we quote the old quote and we just drop it there. We're learning from each other. We're all coming.
Yeah, well, you can do it on Facebook
Brandyn
too.
is savage at the "Is This You" game. For the record, don't ever play that game with Brandyn.
That is just one of my many specialties.
Brandyn will just like he'll dredge up some like joke that you made about pedophilia from 7 years ago.
Yeah,
and
I did. And I had that within like 45 seconds.
And like within 45 seconds of you trying to be a big boy, he'll like find your joke from 7 years ago. It's completely disgusting and just destroy you with it.
I did this to somebody recently. They like went into somebody's comments and they were like, if you like socialism, that means you like China. And if you like China, that means you hate Muslims because of what China is doing to the Muslims. And then so I just like at whatever and then like the keyword Islam. And then of course like 5 years ago, it's like radical Islam is taking over. Muslims don't deserve to be in America. And I'm like, is this you? He's like, that's different. It's different.
Can you stay with us for like 10 or 15 more minutes? We're going to do a post show. If you've got $1, you can see what we talk about next. There's no reason not to. Patreon.com/notsafe. And do better. You can join at the $5 tier and listen to more good stuff that we produce. Hang out on our Discord and a lot more. Patreon.com/notsafe. Until next time. We've done a lot. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.